This is Chris from Enter the Battlefield again, or newly, if you didn't tune into the box opening, which you should go check out.
And also Dave.
Oh yeah, that's right. Dave's going to help me through this, and he's going to be the unknowing brand new player to Disney Lorcana, and I am going to be the grizzled veteran who has spent hours grinding on Pixelborn. I laid out a bunch of cards, which you'll see in a second, from the deck that I am personally going to be playing when we get constructed going. I'm going to be playing Ruby, Amethyst, mid-range / control. I took an assortment of cards from the deck, which all have different types of abilities that you'll see on cards in the game in general. So if we flip to the top down, we can get a look at a bunch of the cards that are going to be in the deck. Perfect. And I kind of sorted them by the types of cards that you'll be experiencing to play with or have played against you. The first thing that is very important is, hey, how do we start the game? So it's 1v1. If anyone has played Magic, for example, you need a resource to cast your spells with from your hand. Those are called lands in some, or they're inks in Lorcana specifically.
Cool.
The difference with Lorcana and some of the other games is all of the cards that have this swirly logo around the number, which if I pull it up over there, are allowed to be played as inks. So you will draw 7 cards to start the game. You are allowed a free mulligan where you can put any number of cards away and draw that many new cards, and then you shuffle your deck. Everybody starts with 7 cards, and you only get the one shot to kind of fix your hand to a more likable hand if you draw, say, a really late drop card that you don't want to have in your opening hand that costs 7.
And so, like, what is the starting hand size?
7.
7. And if you get one free mulligan, what happens after the free mulligan?
That's it.
That's it. Okay.
Yeah. So because so many of the cards are able to be played as inks, there's less concern about not having the resources to play the spells in your hand. Generally, cards are balanced around the fact that if it is uninkable, so a card like this, for example, does not have the swirly around the cost, it is uninkable. So you can only pay it by paying the cost, or if the spell is a song, a character can do it, which I'll get to in a second. But yeah, you start off 7 cards, 1 mulligan, and then you go. You get 7 cards in your hand, and then you take a card on your turn, and you can show your opponent that it's inkable, put it face down, and then that counts as your ink. So let's say this card's here, it's in my hand. Now I say I am playing this Maleficent, which is inkable, face down, and now I have 1 resource.
Oh.
And I'd be able to cast a 1 mana spell, like say this Shield of Virtue, for example. I can pay the 1 and put it onto my battlefield.
You represent, like, how do you represent paying, or like, do you?
So you exhaust your resource, which is in Magic tapping, effectively, right? That's how you show that you've used it, and then you do not get to unexhaust it until your next turn. All cards are played on your own turn in Lorcana. There are no instant or interrupt speed effects in the game at the moment. Who knows if that will come down the road, but for now, everything is done on your turn in any sequence you like, because you are the only one acting on the game. I'm going to just show a few card types, then I'll pick up the cards and I'll show you kind of how it would flow out if we were going. I took an assortment of cards, so they all have sort of different effects and abilities, so you get an idea of what's going on. I showed you how inks work to get your resources. Here are some creatures, and these creatures have, or characters in this game, have different types of abilities or effects. Some of them occur when it enters play. Some of them are static and are on the card and are activated each time you use the card. And some of them are able to interact with your board or the opponent's board or draw you cards or so on and so forth. So here are Maleficent and Aladdin, just as an example. We'll start with Maleficent. Costs 3 to play, and then it says, is it on frame? It's in frame, yeah.
Yep.
Cast my spell. When you play this character, you may draw a card. Very simple. 3, play it, you draw a card, and you move on. Aladdin, again, when you play it, each opponent loses 1 lore, so their lore counter will go down when it enters play. So those are the enter the battlefield effects. Once it's on the board, no longer does anything else other than has its stats over here, which will be, if it hits something, it hits for 2. If it gets hit, it has 2 life, effectively, for how the game works. Now, here's one where it has static abilities. So Jafar, this character gets +1 to its attack or power status for each card in your hand. So the more cards you have, the higher that number is. If you have 5 cards in hand, it will hit something for 5. If you have 0 cards in hand, unfortunately, it does 0. Dr. Facilier here has Challenger +2. It is a 0/4, but if you challenge, which is attacking another player's character directly, it gets 2 to its attack statistic. So it attacks as a 2/4 effectively.
Yeah.
But is a 0/4 otherwise.
Right.
These are static, so they're always on the character, and it kind of happens.
Yeah, like triggered abilities, activated abilities, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Now these ones are ones where you can exhaust the character for an effect. So the queen here basically says exhaust the queen, draw a card.
Yeah.
Very simple. And then Elsa has exert chosen opposing character. So you can actually exert one of your opponent's cards and then are able to interact with it. Why this is important is because you can only challenge exerted characters. So if a character is not exerted or untapped for Magic players, you cannot attack it.
Hold on.
There we go. Now, the point of the game is to acquire 20 lore. That's how you win.
Yeah.
But board control is very important because if your opponent has a bunch of characters on the board and you have nothing, they can just exhaust them every turn to rack up lore points. Each character, as you see on here, has a little symbol in the text box.
Yep.
However many symbols are here is how many lore you acquire if you exhaust the character to acquire lore.
Yep.
So say I have these 3 characters out over here, and I don't want to attack anything, and I'm okay exhausting them and exposing them to being interacted with, I can just say quest, 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 and I would get 1, 2, 3, 4 lore added onto my counter.
You might have said this already, but when can you exhaust a character?
Any point on your turn.
On your turn.
Yeah, or if you have characters like Elsa, they can exhaust opponent's characters, for example. There are also cards that unexhaust, so on and so forth, as well. So it's kind of a mix between controlling the board and trying to get your 20 lore to win the game.
Cool.
So we went over kind of static and usable abilities, enter the battlefield abilities. Now here are a couple of the mechanics that are on cards that you'll run into a lot. Rafiki has Rush, which is haste. It's effectively able to challenge immediately. You cannot quest with it immediately, but you can challenge. So Rafiki would come in. If there's a character, say they're a 2/3 on the other side, you can challenge that character with your 3/3 Rafiki. It would have 2 damage remaining on it and take out the opposing character. Maui has the same, but Maui and Gaston have another effect on them called Reckless. Reckless forces the character to challenge an opposing character if able. So if they have an exhausted character and you play these, it must attack them if possible. But you can sequence your turn so that something else removes the character if you don't want to attack with that one. That's another little level to what it does. The other major effect you're going to see is called Shift. Shift allows a card, so this Aladdin, for example, say you have this Aladdin on the board. Instead of paying 7 for this Aladdin, you can shift 5. So you can pay 5 to play this over top of the other Aladdin and get it in play for a discount. The other benefit to this is it is not exhausted, or it doesn't need time for the ink to dry, which is the equivalent of summoning sickness or so on and so forth. For most card games have this. When you play the card, you can't do anything with it right away for 1 turn. This game is the same.
But if you shift it,
it has the status of the card that was there previously, which means you would be able to then challenge or quest immediately, for example. And it gets it out sooner than it would on the ink curve, I guess, which can kind of surprise people or save you having to pay 7 to get it out onto the board. So shift is going to be really important and something that you will see used often in play. Next, we have equipment. Equipment enters the battlefield or enters the play area. I'm not 100% sure what the terminology is for Lorcana specifically, but it remains there, and you can repeatedly reuse the effect on it by paying the cost. So Shield of Virtue says tap it, or exhaust it, pay 3. And you can ready chosen character, but they cannot quest for the rest of this turn. So what you can do is quest with your character, pay the 3, unexhaust it, and then now you can challenge again, or use an effect on it, or an ability on it.
Cool.
And by unexhausting the character, it also makes it less susceptible to being challenged or effects your opponent may play against it. So it can offer security to it.
Yeah,
Also.
just as a way to protect something, if like they got a board and you just want to not have it challenged, you just set it back to ready.
Exactly. It could be as simple as I don't need to use anything else on it, but I don't want them playing a Maui, for example, hitting it for 6 and getting rid of it, because the Maui can't challenge it if it's not exhausted. White Rabbit's Pocket Watch, another one, exhaust it, pay 1. Chosen character gains rush this turn. So now, say I play this Aladdin, which has an amazing effect on it, which says, during your turn, if this character banishes another character in a challenge, you gain 2 lore and an opponent loses 2 lore, so a 4 lore swing. Normally you would play this, and it would sit there, and then you have to wait a turn to do something with it, and now your opponent can play around that. Here, you can exhaust, pay the 1, Aladdin comes in, can challenge right away, take something out, and potentially swing the lore by 4 points.
Nice.
And you can use that effect at any time. It stays on the field, and you can use it as many times as you like. 2 more quick types that I have here. One is a song. Now, songs are very interesting and pretty valuable in this game. You can either pay the cost, which on this one, Friends on the other side, is 3, or you can exhaust a character that costs 3 or more and get the effect for free. So, for example, I played Maleficent last turn. Maleficent came in, drew me a card. It's my turn again. I can now exhaust Maleficent, play this, not use any of my ink, and draw 2 cards. So you generate a lot of value by being able to do that. Because now you still have your ink to then play one of the cards you draw or another card in hand at the same time. Be Prepared, a very powerful 7 mana uninkable. So you can either exhaust a 7 cost to play this or pay the 7, and it banishes all characters, both sides of the board. Just clears it, fresh start for everybody.
And you can cast it for free.
If you have a 7 cost. It will then also banish the 7 cost character that you use to cast it, but yeah, it can cast for free, so then you can clear the board and take proactive stance on the board by then playing something out yourself with the ink you have left over. Last type is just a straight up action. This would be a normal spell in a game. Very simple. Pay the cost, get the thing. This one, I love this. Anybody that knows me, I love banishing or destroying things on my opponent's side, and then playing my thing. That's what I do. Grindy, mid-rangey matchups. This, pay 5, get rid of whatever you want on their side.
Excellent.
Very simple. That's kind of the major forms of cards, abilities, so on and so forth that you get there. That's a ton of information, but what I'll do is I'll put these all together. Gonna try to be as gentle as possible because I just opened these and want to keep them in minty shape. And then I am going to add the rest of the cards that I open that are going to be going into my deck. Kind of shuffle them up a little bit.
That seems like you've been telling me about this purple-black deck for a bit.
Yeah. It's spicy. I like it. I've been playing on Pixelborn. I tried out 20 different decks. This one, I love playing one thing.
Yep. And then
letting my opponent do stuff. And then playing one thing
everything.
and letting my opponent do stuff. And kind of having a toolbox where you can play a bunch of random things that help in different matchups. And this is that deck for me. Here we go. I have my deck. It'll be here. In Constructed, it is 60 card decks. You're allowed 4 copies of any card to be in the deck. In Limited, it is 40 cards. In Constructed, you can only have 2 colors.
Right.
In Limited, there's no color restriction.
Oh, okay. So
you can play any colors.
Yeah, okay. But in a constructed deck, you can only have 2 colors. That's it.
That's it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the restriction.
Can you have 1 color?
Yep. I think it's up to 2 colors is the rule. Now there's only 203 cards in the whole set, so
might change.
Power levels drop in the cards as well too. So playing a single color, you won't find enough powerful cards to make that work effectively. But say we're at the start of the game. I'm gonna draw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 cards, and I'm just gonna play them face up so that we kind of see what's here. So now, here's a starting hand. What we want to look for is we want to have a good curve, as in we want to be able to try to play a card every single turn.
Yep.
And we would like to have inkable cards, which are the cards with the swirly around the cost, so that we know that we can play one every turn to continue to play out more and more expensive cards. This hand is actually phenomenal.
It seems like all of them are inkable.
Yes, they are all. These ones happen to all be inkable, and they're on a very nice curve. So here you might say, okay, I'm not going to have a ton of cards in hand because this is going to draw me cards, and this comes in really late. So maybe this hand might be just entirely keepable, but let's say for argument's sake, these are the two cards that we don't want, and we want some more early interaction or a removal spell or something like that. So we can take these two cards out, draw two cards to replace it. There we go. We got a removal spell, but this is uninkable and expensive, and we usually only want this later. So this is not an improvement for our starting hand, but now we're stuck. So you can only do it one time.
Yeah.
Then you put this card back here, and then shuffle, 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 so on and so forth. It goes back in. Now this is all in our hand, and now you have to work your way through the game. If you go first, you do not draw. If you go second, you draw a card before you play. And now we need to imagine, how is this game going to go? So I want to get Archimedes out, obviously, to have some sort of presence early. Which of these cards is the least valuable to me at the moment? So I'd look at this and I'd say, you know what? I have multiple 3-drops. Aladdin takes 1 lore from my opponent when he enters and is only a 2/2, whereas Elsa is a 2/3, costs the same, and I can exert characters on the opponent's side. That seems like it'll probably be more valuable than there's 0 lore at this point.
Yeah.
So I would probably play the Aladdin as my ink, and then I will exhaust it to play Archimedes out onto the board. My opponent will take their turn, then it'll come back to me, unexhaust everything that's exhausted, draw a card. We know what this is because I didn't shuffle. It's the Jafar over here. And then now we have the same question. What does our turn look like? Dr. Facilier, really good to have out for health. So difficult to get rid of. Can challenge as a 2-power, but is also just an annoying threat on here. The Jafar, we don't have tons and tons of card draw, and it's the most expensive card. Longest to get to, we would probably play that down. Exhaust these two to play out Dr. Facilier, and then we would quest here for 1 lore to add 1 to the 20 that we're looking for.
Yeah.
Now, if the opponent, say they had out a 2/3 character or something, maybe I don't want to quest for lore because then their 2/3 would remove my character and still exist on their side. That's where you have to make those decisions. But anyway, we would continue on, same thing over here, and then we're going to get to something cool here. The Queen, I would probably play 5 costs. We're not there yet. We would exhaust the 3, and then we would play Elsa out. We can quest with these if we want to. We're up to 3 lore, so on and so forth. The next turn is where it gets a little bit more interesting because we have a song in our hands. So we're going to draw the shield. The shield is great late game.
Yeah.
Not as good early on. So I'd probably play the shield down.
And it's like...
Actually, I wouldn't do this first because we have a song and we have a 3-cost character.
Yep.
We can exhaust Elsa, play this for free.
Yep.
This goes into discard. We draw 2 cards off of its effect. Now I can choose what I would like to put into my inkwell, and I have more information.
Yep.
So maybe I don't want to play one of the specific cards that I was going to play before, which was the shield. Maybe I do still.
But you could play the shield now. Can you activate the shield when you play it to ready Elsa?
Yes, you could. Yeah.
Cool.
So if I was worried about Elsa being lost, I could play this down here, play this out, pay the 3, and then unexhaust that. So now it's not susceptible to... Yep, that's a perfectly reasonable line. The other thing you need to be looking out for here is I only have 1 more inkable card now, which is fine to cast this, so it's not the end of the world. But do I want to hold this back so I can ink it in case because we're trying to get to later in the curve with the cards that we have here, obviously, right? And it plays out like that. Maleficent, great draw. 3, draw another card. And then you can kind of keep snowballing from there. So board control is super important because that's how you're able to quest to get all your lore points. So if you have even tons of small characters like this, they need to get rid of each and every single one of them unless they happen to have a card like Be Prepared, which wipes it, right?
Yeah.
So I can quest here aggressively because I know that even at the end of the day, if they remove all of these, I have this waiting in the back pocket. And once they've gotten rid of all of my things and they have a board full of things, I can now wipe the board and then we can start over again.
So in competitive and or limited, like the end is to get to 20
You
victory
win the
points.
game when you hit 20 lore.
In a limited or competitive game, is it best 2 out of 3?
It is 2 out of 3.
Yep.
50-minute rounds.
Yep. Okay.
So it's very similar to most other card games that all have similar rules. Limited, you're only playing with the 40 cards, obviously, and there's not the color restriction. But standard 2 out of 3, 20 lore to win the game. The board does not matter for winning the game.
Right.
It's just getting to the 20 lore. But the board does matter in that this can get out of hand if you haven't removed a bunch of stuff and you're just focusing on getting your lore only, right? So it's a balance between the field and your lore total.
All right. Anything else?
That's kind of a quick explanation. The game obviously has tons of cards, different colors, so on and so forth, but I tried to highlight some of the more common effects that are on a lot of the cards, or if the effect's not there, something similar to it. Really excited to get the game going. We're going to be running Constructed weekly on Sundays, I believe, in Newmarket. Not sure which day Oakville is going to be doing, but you can check etboakville.com for that information. The calendar is on the front page, and enterthebattlefield.ca for Newmarket's calendar. And we hope that you love this game as much as I've loved playing it on Pixel Warren.
Yeah, you've been a fiend online
and
for a
getting
bit.
it together. And I hope to see you out at some of our events, or if you're just watching us from afar, check out our content, as there will be Lorcana content on there regularly, added in with our Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh, etc. Like, subscribe, all the good stuff, all the bibbly boops and bonks.
Yep.
And
yeah, if you want to follow us on Twitch, follow us on YouTube. You can do a bunch of stuff, like Chris said, and this video will be up on YouTube soon. But other than that, have a good day.
Thanks for tuning in.